What if I told you that for 99% of human history, your ancestors lived in a world of absolute terrifying silence? No words, no names, no "I love you" or "look out." Imagine standing in a damp, pitch-black cave, smelling the wet limestone and the metallic scent of fresh blood on a flint knife, and having no way to describe it. You could feel the fear rising in your throat, a physical lump of heat, but there was no label for it. You were trapped inside your own skull. Scientists like Noam Chomsky and evolutionary biologists have spent decades trying to pinpoint the exact Tuesday that we started talking, but the truth is much stranger. It wasn't a sudden burst of poetry. It was a desperate, bloody necessity. Something shifted in our brains that turned a grunt into a weapon, and once it started, the world would never be quiet again. Before we had the FOXP2 gene, the so-called language gene, our throats were literally built differently. If you tried to speak to a human from 200,000 years ago, they physically couldn't mimic your vowels. Their larynx sought higher, like a chimpanzee's. But they weren't stupid. Think about the precision required to nap a hand ox from obsidian. You have to strike the stone at a specific angle, feeling the vibration travel up your arm. To teach a child this, you couldn't say, "Hold it like this." You had to rely on mirror neurons. You'd catch the child's eye, wait for the flicker of recognition, and perform the motion. It was a dance of pure observation. There was a profound, silent intimacy in that. You didn't just listen to someone, you mapped their every muscle twitch onto your own nervous system. But then, the environment changed, and silence became a death sentence. As our tribes grew larger, the grooming method of picking lice off each other to build trust wasn't efficient anymore. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar suggests that language evolved as a way to groom more people at once. We needed to gossip. We needed to know who was stealing meat and who was sleeping with whom without having to spend hours picking fleas off their back. This is where the psychological shift happened. We started using vocal gestures. A specific hoot wasn't just a sound, it was a digital packet of data. Imagine the first time a proto-human realized they could point to a thicket of dry brush and make a sharp hissing sound to represent a hidden viper. In that second, the snake wasn't just a physical threat anymore. It became a symbol. It became an idea that could exist even when the snake wasn't there. But there was a darker side to this breakthrough. Before language, humans likely experienced the world in a state of flow or total sensory immersion. You didn't think about being hungry. You just felt the gnaw in your stomach and moved toward the scent of tubers. The moment we gave things names, we created a wall between ourselves and reality. Psychologist Julian Jaynes famously argued that early humans didn't even have a private internal monologue like we do. They didn't think, "I should go hunting." Instead, they might have heard the voice of their leader or a dead ancestor echoing in their minds, hallucinating the command. We weren't talking to each other yet. We were responding to the internal echoes of our social hierarchy. It was a chaotic, schizophrenic way to live, driven by the raw impulse to survive the next winter. The real shock turn came when we realized that language wasn't built for truth. It was built for manipulation. If I can tell you there's a lion behind that rock, I can also tell you there's a ghost in the trees that only I can talk to. Language allowed us to create myths, religions, and lies. It allowed the weak to control the strong through the power of a story. We traded our primal connection to the earth for the ability to build civilizations out of thin air. We became the only animal on the planet capable of being offended by a sound. Think about that. A specific vibration of air molecules can now make your blood boil or your heart break. We moved from a world of direct physical experience into a world of shared hallucinations, and we've been stuck there ever since. Even now, when you're scrolling through your phone in a crowded room, you're using a refined version of that original primate grunt. We think we've mastered communication, but look at how often we feel misunderstood. It's because words are just a clumsy filter for the massive, wordless storm of emotions happening inside us. We are still those silent apes, standing in the dark, trying to explain the smell of the rain to someone who can only hear the sound of our voice. We didn't just gain the ability to speak. We lost the ability to be truly understood without the interference of symbols. Next time you find yourself struggling to find the right words, remember that for millions of years, the most important things we ever said were never spoken at all. They were felt in the chest, and then they were gone.